Hello, Twitch. Oh, we got an echo right off the back. That's okay. I think it went okay. This is AWS Howdy Partner. How's it going, everybody? We're back. We've got a new partner with us. It's going to be exciting. We're talking about security today, one of my favorite topics, one of the most important topics. It's actually job number one here at AWS. So I think it's very appropriate that you all are bringing some really great practices, not just with cloud security, but also with, I think we're going to be talking a lot today about Java security. Is that right, Brian?
Yeah, we're
And kind of
definitely
fit?
we're gonna talk about Java security, Node.js security, basic application security, and some container security as well. So we got the whole shebang.
All right, there's a preview, a preview. So I'll do the round of introductions in just a moment. But if you are tuning in for the very first time, if you've never watched AWS Howdy Partner before, this is a weekly show. We do this 2 times, Monday and Wednesday typically. We bring in partners from the APN, or the AWS Partner Network, and we showcase the technologies that they've built. Today, we are with Snyk. And it took everything in me not to say Snyk. I swear. I'm like up here thinking the whole time, Snyk, Snyk, Snyk. It's such a great name for what you all do, right? I think it makes total sense once you hear somebody pronounce it. You're like, that makes a lot of sense. Security company, Snyk. People are sneaky. Totally get it. I think we're gonna get in more to like how you came to that name. I think Marie's gonna ask you some questions about that. But Marie, who are you? I'm AM. I'm on here all the time. SA.
Yeah.
Marie, what do you do?
Thanks, Sam. Yeah, so my name is Marie. I am on the Partner Solutions Architect team as well. This is my second Howdy Partner episode. Super excited to be here with Snyk. Really great guys here for the show, and really exciting demo to come. So I'm really excited for you guys to all be here and kind of see and hear and watch things get broken, which is always our favorite thing on the show. So I'm going to pass it down to Jim. If you can introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do for Snyk.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having us here today. Really excited about this. This is my first Twitch anything, actually. So I'm excited to learn more about Twitch, but also my first AWS Howdy Partner. So excited about that as well. Maybe even more importantly than learning about Twitch. But I am in product marketing for Snyk, specifically with our container and infrastructure as code products. And so really excited to share with you today a bit about what we do there, as you'll see Brian break things around this and hopefully be able to fix them as well. But really excited to be here. Thanks for having us.
Brian, thanks, Jim.
Be careful of the wave of fame that is headed your way now that you are a Twitch superstar.
Yeah,
it's gonna happen.
I have to invite my son to come watch. See if he can
ride that wave. Just ride it. Brian, tell us about you.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks for having us. I mean, I'm pretty excited to do this, although it's quite late over here. Yes, it's my first Twitch thing, just as Jim just mentioned. My first Twitch thing ever, and my first time on Howdy Partner, and I am very excited to show you a bunch of demos / hacks today. So yeah, I'm psyched, definitely.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian and Jim.
Ahead,
what were you saying, AM?
I'm just excited to learn about Snyk. I know a bit about it. I know it fits into like a CI/CD workload sometime. I don't think it's got to fit in there. It's definitely just for any type of times you want to check the security and posturing of your application. So I'm going to be learning right alongside you all. Marie, what are you most excited about for this episode?
Yeah, I wish I was an expert, but no, I'm really excited to learn more. really excited just to learn how this can be applicable to our viewers and when they should start using it. So Brian or Jim, if one of you first, so we can all know how Snyk got its name and its spelling, if you guys know that, if one of you want to jump in and tell us a little bit more about that, and then we can hear a little bit more about what we're going to see today.
Yep. Yeah, I'll do the name part because that I know really well, and Brian's going to be doing most of the heavy lifting on the demo side of things. So the name, two parts to it. One, Snyk, as you got, right? It's kind of sneaking around. We're sort of got that a little bit of dangerous sounding, which is tied into security very closely, of course. But the actual spelling of the name, SNYK, is an acronym for So Now You Know. So the idea there being you get this list of security issues, and so now you know you have problems and you need to go and fix them, and we help you with that side of the equation as well. So that's where the name came from. The dog that is our mascot, his name is Patch, which I just learned like 2 weeks ago. I didn't know he had a name, but his name is I guess it's a he. I don't really know, but the dog is named Patch. So if you see the dog mascot, you kind of see it in the background of Brian's slides. His name is Patch. So that's
awesome.
That's I have to compliment Brian's hat too, by the way. I'm a big hat fan, and I think that's a pretty incredible hat there, Brian. Nice choice.
Thank you. It's actually a one of a kind because, well, I wanted to be like I love my hats, and I wanted to add something special while presenting. So I created this one myself, and I know a lot of my coworkers are like, okay, where did you get that one? And like, I created it myself, so I'm the only one who can have it. But yeah.
Very interesting. I was going to ask where might one procure such a hat, but it sounds like you got to be in the know. You gotta know people. Cool, Marie. What's your next question? You got
So my next question is, so how do I even, or when do I even start working with Snyk? So I'm a customer, I'm a developer. I just want to, when do I even start using or working with you guys?
Yeah. So, the easiest way is, if you have a code repo, you can get Snyk to scan it, and we'll give you the results of what we find in there. So you can have, any code repo. It doesn't really make a difference too much. You can have it sitting locally if you really want to, and just scan it locally. It doesn't matter. And we'll scan it and we'll give you a report. And it's really that easy. In fact, we're running an internal boot camp on Snyk, and we're teaching all of our marketing team how to use Snyk. So everybody's creating code repos in marketing, which is kind of funny when you think about it, but they're all creating code repos, and they're creating container repositories and getting ready to do this. So if they can do it, anybody can do it. And I say that as part of the marketing team, right? But yeah, it's really simple. You can plug in a code repo, you can scan your code locally. If you have a container, you can scan that. We try and make it as easy as possible for you as a developer, wherever it is that you work. There's IDE plugins if that's the way you prefer to see it first. But we try and put this really wherever it is that you do your work, so that you can see that information straight away in the place that you want to see it. There's a Snyk console, right? You can log into a Snyk console and see reports there, but that's kind of taking you away from the things that you normally look at as a developer.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. That's really cool. I'm really excited to see this in action. And so for those of you that are just joining us, we're with the partner, Snyk. We have Jim and Brian with us, and they're going to show us how attackers exploit some open source code. So it's going to be a pretty exciting demo. But before we jump in, we have one last question, and it's a kind of a leading question. Before we hopped on live today, we had some Harry Potter discussions. But before we jump into the demo, the most important question we have for you you guys is, if Sneak was a house in Harry Potter, which house would they be and why?
And where does Sneak get sorted? Actually, too, I wanted to call out Jim. I could hear you trying not to laugh as I was resorting our names around. I think anybody watching, that's how you know this is live, guys.
Yeah.
For people, you all know it's live because we just played musical chairs there when Chime had a little hiccup and moved our videos around. So with that in mind, ask us questions. You'll actually be able to tell us where you want this conversation to go. But we have to answer Marie's extremely important question. Which house is Sneak sorted into?
All of Sneak, huh? I would hazard a guess that it would be Ravenclaw, only because there's a lot of smart people at Sneak, and that seems like this kind of smart, nerdy-ish house. Not that everybody's Sneak is a nerd, but with that category, I feel from time to time a bit like Luna Lovegood, so that fits well with me too, I think. So that would be my guess. I don't know, Brian, if you have a different idea of where we would be sorted.
I am between Ravenclaw and Gryffindor. I mean, I think Gryffindor is also about bravery and daring and having the nerve to do this. And I think pitching into security issues and showing that to people is sometimes not what people want, but if because we can also help them, it is a good thing. On the other hand, I totally agree with you on the intelligence and knowledge wise of Ravenclaw. So I'm in between the two.
No, I think that's a good assessment. Excited to come to see our viewers or us come to a conclusion at the end too. I think we'll fall in line there. So do you want to kick us off, Brian? Jump into a little bit of a precursor. Tell us a little bit about what we're going to see today.
Yeah, definitely. Well, how do you want me to start? Let's basically just start with putting the screen on, or is that not yet what you want?
You got it. No, absolutely. I gotta change around our names here a bit. You get to see the stuff move again in real time. Go ahead, Brian.
Ooh.
Sorry.
Well, okay. So the talk we created around this, or the demo part we created around it, called Stranger Danger, and it's a bit of a thing like we're gonna hack a few things. Like if there is something wrong and the exploit is known and you're not familiar with it, or you're not yet chimed in like you have an issue, then you might be in danger. But actually, what I want to talk about, we're starting out with a Harry Potter house, right? And I just put something in just for you, and that's this picture. And this is a picture from a train station in London. It's an actual picture. I just heard that it was King's Cross. I thought it was Liverpool Station, but it doesn't matter. It's a real picture. But the point is, this is platform 9 3/4, right? And you only get there if you know exactly where to put it, where to walk through that wall with the right amount of force, with the right amount of speed to get into that platform 9 3/4. That is basically the same way with security. I mean, there is a tiny soft spot somewhere, and if you pinch it with the right amount of force at the right time with the right tools, you can get in, and there's a whole world open. And there will be things you might not even imagine as a developer, because I will be speaking from a developer's point of view. Like if you're developing, you're thinking about, hey, I'm creating new cool stuff. But most of the time, you're not thinking about the weird ways people find out to get into your stuff. That's actually not the way you intended to create it, right? So it's a bit of the same. Push it the right amount of force with the right tools on the right place, and you will get in platform 9 3/4, only on the bad side of the station in this case.
Are you saying that the Wizarding world doesn't have like the most secure systems. That's
Basically,
kind of
yeah. It's kind of as we call it, security by obscurity, right? If you don't know, you cannot get in. But if you know where to go and you know at what time the train's coming, and the portal is open, and you push on it with your cart, you're in. And that's basically just taking the right steps. And some of these steps might be weird, like I have never thought of that. But if somebody published this on the internet. Like, imagine that. Somebody published on the internet, the train is coming tomorrow at 10 a.m. You have to be at between platform 9 and 10 on that wall and push it as hard as you can with your cart, and you're in. And people will try that, right? And it's basically the same with issues in your program. You don't have to be keen to find it out yourself. If somebody found it out and published it, everybody can do it. And, well, we all know what the big bad internet sometimes provides you for information. It can be good, but it can also be used in a bad way. So
that's true.
I want to continue basically my story with this word. And it's, well, the first time I saw this word, I felt like, come on, is this yet another hype thing? Are we going on that hype train again? Like, what do we do next? Are we including blockchain and AI and all that kind of stuff so we can cross it off our bingo card? It felt like a buzzword to me. But then I found out that it's actually not. I mean, developers and operations, we try to, like, in the real world, we try to connect these things together and try to make sure that we get rid of that wall between developers and operations, and not like, okay, I developed something here, ops dude, make it work, do your magic. And that's what we did like 10 years ago or something. And now it's more like in one team, we all
10 years ago.
Eat our own.
We totally stopped doing that across the board. Nobody does that anymore. Not me. Definitely not me.
I'm trying to look on the bright side here, man. You're totally right. You're totally right. But okay, I assume that we all have very, very good and smart and on top of it developers on this channel right now. So we're trying to do DevOps in some kind of way. And some people say I'm not doing DevOps. But basically, if you are creating this stuff and something goes wrong, and at 3 o'clock in the middle of the night, somebody calls you up and you need to fix it, then you're doing DevOps, because you basically own what you create. And that is the base of DevOps. You create something, you own it as a team. And that can be that you're a developer and you have an ops person in your team. But as a team, you own it. It's not more like, it's not my responsibility, you fetch it. The point only is, with dev and ops, we focus on new features, getting things done. But in the middle, there's something like, make sure things will not break. And it's not breaking in like your tests are breaking or your features are breaking, but somebody might be sneaking in. And that is not something, security is not on top of mind of a developer, on top of mind of an ops person. It is something that is like far, far beyond. I mean, we're trying to create stuff, more or less, and that's our focus, and that's what developers in general are good at. That's perfectly fine. But what if you're creating your stuff, and after 3 weeks or something, your sprint is done or whatever you do, and then the security person comes up to you and just gives you that note that says, no, you cannot go into production. And you get a little tension, right? It's them against me. And we want to break that up. And we want to make sure that security needs to be exactly the same as scalability, maintainability, these kind of things, part of your DevOps mindset. So that's why they created DevSecOps. That Sec is in the middle because it's both for the dev people and both for the ops people. And it's centralized because it's, well, I work for a security company. This, of course, I will say it's very important, right? So let me continue with the storyline. Yeah, sure. You're sure you can break it. Can break in anytime.
Okay, cool. With when you combine all of these into one, right? One of my favorite things about being a dev, or really like any tech person whatsoever in a company, is that I always, in the past, was able to sandbag by saying, "Oh, that's not security won't prove that." Like, what happens when you combine all three of these into one person? You don't have that. You don't have that way to tell people you can't do something because security says no. If I'm kind of making a joke here a little bit, just a little.
No, no, yeah. I get the joke, and it's partially true. I mean, it's the easy way out, right? As a developer, like, no, 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 I can't do that because security says no. Computer says, security says no. Exactly that. The point, although, is in the end, we need to cover the same ground. And I want to show you that with actually my next slide, because we're trying to solve a problem here. And that problem is, like, say, well, let's go back 10 years. 10 years for me. I just give you a personal story. 10 years ago, I worked for government agencies. And government agencies, although here in the Netherlands, I'm based in the Netherlands, I worked for one of the bigger ministries, and we needed to build stuff. And that was all fun. But the point was, we only deployed 3 times a year. And that was 10 years ago. Nowadays, if you look at e-commerce platforms or whatever you do with all the cloud options you have, you might be deploying 3 times a day instead of 3 times a year. So things are sped up. I mean, we do more and more and more because we want to get on top of that. We want to make sure that we get bigger and better. We have that feature out just before our competitors do, so we can get more revenue, or people will come to us instead of them. The point is, however, as I said, we're thinking about creating things and not so much as a security first mindset. And I believe that security should be first, just as scalability be what things we do now with all the cloud opportunities we have, all the container opportunities we have. We think about scalability. How can we scale to 1 million requests per second? But security is more or less on the end, because you see that in a regular company, we'll still see that there is a security expertise team, but it is siloed at the end, just like we had with Dev and Ops. And most of the time, they have a general mindset, and they work for all the development teams, and they have a single policy and one ring to rule them all, right? That kind of policy. So the point is, if you're doing that, and at the end that security person comes up to you and says no, and it keeps on going that way, you need to do a lot of rework as a developer, and that bugs me. I mean, I love to spend my time on coding, but it needs to be useful. Otherwise, I will be on the playing field with my kids, or drinking beer in the pub, whatever. But I do not want to do things 3 times because somebody says no, and we have a policy that is kind of, itchy. So, but in the end, it's just like children. We need to play along. We need to play along because we do not want to be that company that has that important piece of data from our customers out, because the customers trust us. Customers trust us developers, or the programs, or the software we create. They trust it with their data, and their data is important. So that people will kind of like, how bad is it, man? These are ghost stories. How bad is it? Well, I think the larger amount of people that are watching here are probably based in the US, right? Am I right? Am?
I don't actually. We have a pretty global audience. I know it's kind of a U.S. centric time that we're on, but we've had people say hello from all over. But yeah, there's probably a lot of U.S. people here.
a lot of U.S. people. So you probably have heard of this, like somewhere in 2017 or something, that went something wrong with some company down in, they're based in Atlanta. And I do not want to get into the company, because at this point, I think this company has a very good security policy, and they're on top of they're they're on top of it, really. The point is, in 2017, they were breached. And honestly, I have never heard of this company before 2017. And you can say that's good marketing because everybody knows your name now, but they might be looking different at it. Point is, they were using a library, well, basically a framework. It was a Java framework, Apache Struts 2 at that point. And that Apache Struts 2 library was used to build their business logic on top of. Okay, cool, fine. Point was that after a certain amount of time, there was a bug found, or there was actually a security issue found. And as it was already in production, nobody looked at it, or nobody really put attention on it, or maybe nobody even knew of that, because everybody normally is busy with, like, can we get that next feature out? That is the normal mindset. And it's pretty obvious for a developer. Get something new done, build something new. But you're already in production. And that has that application or that library that you're using has an issue. So people can sneak in. That was an unintentional pun, but okay, whatever. They can sneak in, and if you're not aware, they can be in there for months, weeks, years, I don't know. If you're not fixing that hole and you're not aware of it, they can snoop around and they can get our data and they can get our customer data. And in the end, over 143 million US customers were compromised. Right. Well, let me first demo something. I mean, slides are boring, right?
We had a few questions come up. Brian, would now be a good time?
Sure. Yeah, definitely. I wanted to after this, I will actually exploit this hack. Whatever happened, I will explain it to you, and I will actually show you. But get the questions out first.
Oh, cool. The struts. Nice. The struts hack. Yeah. So we might need some clarification from the audience here for some of their questions. One, I think Jim just answered in chat. Thanks, Jim. About Deepcode and you all acquiring Deepcode, but the other was about false positives. That's what I think we might need some clarification on. I think.
I think there's anytime you start talking about vulnerabilities and vulnerability scanning, people are worried about false positives, which is just wasted time shooting down things that don't really exist. False negatives too, right? Anything false is bad in different ways, and so it's a challenge. I would say for Snyk, right? We have this security team so we're not just taking like a list of vulnerabilities there's loads of open source vulnerability lists that you could use and parse through and do some analysis, but we have a team that does the analysis from those lists, but also does their own analysis. And so there's a lot of work that goes into making making that research work and making it workable for the end user, right? And providing the right types of information, but also eliminating things like false positives or negatives, either one.
That makes sense. One thing that Alex Smasha is bringing up too, that maybe we can talk. This is not really so much a question, but I think something that we can weave into the conversations as we go forward. I kind of made the joke that I did about using security to sandbag, because that's true. It really does happen. I have never done that ever. I want you to know, ever.
Lies.
Never done anything wrong in my life ever. I'm just kidding. But I think just as much as security is a technology thing, it also in some ways is a cultural thing too. Alex Smasha has brought up a point of, sometimes tools like these, they just, the devs fight against it, or the devs don't want to use it. And sometimes it's less about how to introduce a technology and more about how to introduce a technology into the existing culture, or sometimes make a cultural shift into valuing security instead of using it as a weapon against other departments or each other, right? So maybe we could talk through that too. I'm excited to see your exploit, Brian. I want to know more about the Strux vulnerability.
Definitely, I will show you, and we will come back to that story on fixing it and cultural things as well. I have that as part of this slide deck, or this storyline as well. But let's go to an application first. I have a Java application, and I just need to make sure that I am putting it into a Docker container. So I will do a Docker compose up minus build, and I will make sure that Docker composer, no, compose. You see this as live because I make mistakes. So I'm basically building my Java application that contains that Apache Struts in a Docker container because I'm going to break it, and I do not want to break my local machine. Well, I can do that once, but after that, I will not be able to do any other hacks anymore, and that will be boring. I mean, slides alone will be boring. So you see, I have a to-do application that is based on Apache Struts, and you see in my screen very, very quick that it's now downloading stuff from Maven Central. We just have to wait a few seconds for that. It will not take that long. But the point is, what we're going to do is we're going to spin up this application. I'm going to show you what this application does. And then I'm showing you that it actually does not matter what this application does, because Apache Struts is a library that is used for things like routing and getting you to the right place. And obviously, this application has that vulnerable Apache Struts library in it. And we can do some fun things with that if you know what kind of vulnerabilities are in that Apache Struts thing. And now it's starting up Apache Tomcat. Let me already get it's all started. Cool. So let me see if it runs on port 8080, and you will see I have an amazing to-do app. I can sign up over here. I can use a password that is 123456 because that is pretty secure when you work in a security company. Of course, don't do this at home. So,
Brian,
one of the things
for anybody who's not a Java expert, could you give like a quick 2-second rundown? What is Struts? What is
Struts? Is a framework. Struts is a framework. But Struts is a framework that, well, it's kind of old nowadays, but Struts is a framework that is used to build your stuff on top of, and it does some heavy lifting if you want to, for instance, route to a certain part or do a sort of basically some boilerplate stuff. I can go into what Struts exactly does, but that will take the rest of the day. But it's basically you just pull in a framework that you want to have to do the heavy lifting for you, because you do not want to create yet another routing module that brings you to this page or opens this frame or whatever. That is Apache Struts in this case. So Apache Struts, I'm using version 2.3. Don't ever publish this in your own website, of course, that you're using these kind of libraries, because then people will start searching, and that is fun. Because let me open another terminal window. And let's get into that exploit. So I will go into my exploits directory and I will show you something first. So what is it? Which one do I need? Oh, exploits header. Exploits header. All right, let's do that again. And you will see a header over here. And this is pretty fuzzy, right? You see a lot of text over here. But if we make a request to, well, in this case, this Struts application, we can insert headers. And this time, I will insert a content type. Normally, content type will be something like HTML or text or JSON or whatever. This time, the content type is literally this piece of text. And, well, as you look at it, you might see something familiar things, but in the end is basically a content type that does not exist. It's not a legitimate content type. It's a faulty content type. What happens over here, what happens in Apache Struts, well, in this particular version of Apache Struts, is when you insert a faulty content type, you go into an exceptional flow. And somebody found out that when you go into this exceptional flow, for some reason, you can utilize OGNL. And OGNL is the Object Graph Navigational Language, which is an expression language that's existing in struts. With this expression language, you are allowed to interfere with the objects that are already in memory. You can get certain values, you can set certain values, or even worse, you can create new objects. And that's what I'm doing here. I am creating a new process builder. That means I'm creating a new process that runs next to my application. That process, I feed it the bash. That bash, it's on its turn, it's fed a arbitrary command. What I do with the rest of this string is actually I'm routing all the stuff I have over here to an output stream so I can show you what actually happens. But if I can make a new instance of a process builder or of a new runtime, and I can feed it the bash, so then I can actually give it any command that is available on that system. Got me so far? So let me just try that. I love that. So let me do this one. And I will show you in a second what it actually means. So if I do this one, what did I do? I just get that header I just showed you. And I replace the word command with the word env. And what env does on a Linux system or on any Unix-based system, it shows you the environment variables. It's a command you can type in your terminal, and it shows you the environment variables. Well, I just curl it with a get, and I just route it to HTTP localhost, in this case -h, because I want to insert that content type. So let's do this. And what you see over here is you see something weird back, something goes wrong, whatever, but the output stream already gives me the environment variables of this machine, of my Docker container, of course, because it runs on my local machine, but this is my Docker container. These things are interesting because now we can look, for instance, hey, I see where the Java home is. So there is where actually the JDK is that is used to spin up Java, to use Java. I see what paths are open, but all kinds of stuff. Fun part is I can do, this is just a command and it doesn't do anything I can read. Fun enough, but I can basically do anything now. Let me test it. So instead of env, let's do something weird. Let's start with simply an ls. And you see that these are the files that are there in my Docker container at the point where I'm in. What I can do as well, I can, for instance, go again over here and it doesn't give me anything back, but okay, it gives me a 200. Fine, let's try that ls again. Hey, we have a howdy. Now you see we have a howdy.txt.
Somebody suggested rm-rf. I'm not sure, if we want to do that.
we can definitely do that, and that's the whole reason why I put this in a container on my local machine. That if we actually do that, nothing breaks on my local machine. But yes, the point is, I'm running this Docker container as root. It has root access, so of course you can say like, oh, you shouldn't be running this as root, but next time, first check your own containers if you're not doing that, because a lot of people are doing this by default or just running this like it works. It's fine. There's nothing on here. But I can read, I can write, I can execute code on this. I can create bash scripts, come back tomorrow and execute these bash scripts. Interesting. But let's keep it to the environment variables, just to be safe. I mean,
you could easily get
environment variables.
You get a database connection string out of
anything.
Yeah, I mean,
Definitely. You basically with this combination, you basically have terminal. You have a terminal, and you can do whatever you want.
That's wild.
But just these are the environment variables again, and please keep in mind that just bear with me, and we have the Java home. We need this later on for another hack. I'm going to use this for yet another hack, but remember, we found the Java home with this hack. We can do loads and loads more, but let's keep it to this for now. But this is basically how the struts hack took place. Because you can get in, you have terminal rights, you can snoop around, you can create scripts, you can do a whole bunch of stuff. You can even overwrite some commands that are there. And well, then it's very hard if you can overwrite a command and you can and you basically execute it a day later. It's very hard to find out afterwards, like what did happen, what really happened. You have no clue anymore. So the more time an attacker has with this exploit, the more damage he can do, but he can also cover his traces. So this was just, in short, this was what happened to Equifax with that struts hack. This is one of the hacks. There are multiple of these kind of similar hacks where you can utilize this OGNL language to create new processes. Well, let's get back to the storyline. Because
hey, Brian, I'm going to interrupt you for a second. We've had a couple of new viewers jump on, so I just wanted to kind of refresh those who are refresh the group that's on and kind of bring in those new people. But for those of you who join, we're with partner Snyk. Something that we learned is that it's So Now You Know is the acronym for Snyk. And Brian's in mid-hack right now, diving into some more vulnerabilities and some things that he can take down and put back together. So for those of you just joining, any questions you have, please put them in the chat. We'll make some time to ask them throughout the rest of Brian's demo.
Cool. So you are building a piece of software. As a developer or as a team, you build a piece of software, and this is the whole binary you put into production. Just a question to all of you, like how much of this binary is actually your code? How much of this whole binary you put into production, if it's a Java jar or something, how much of it is actually the code you wrote? It's not much.
Yeah, not very much. Like a controller.
It's about this side. This is the code. Yeah, definitely. But it's cool, right? Because you want to write the business logic. You want to write the things that make a difference for your company or whatever you want to deploy. The rest of it are frameworks, libraries, and these libraries take in other libraries, and it goes several levels deep. And that's cool because you do not want to create yet another CRUD repository or yet another REST endpoint or whatever. You want to focus on the stuff that is actually making a difference. So we're using open source libraries, and that's cool. And we should be doing that. But we do give a lot of effort on that our code is perfect. We do code reviews, pair programming, we have linters. And what do you do for the rest of the 99% that is also in that binary? That is the big question we are trying to solve. Because we basically, well, I want to say not trust each other within a team, but we do not want to get our code into production if not at least 2 developers looked at it. But how do you manage your dependencies or the libraries you took in or you build on top of? How do you stay on top of them? How do you manage them? How do you know if there is not an issue with that? That is the big question. And I'm going to few of examples. This is a Node.js example, a serverless example. And it was, at the time we wrote it, it was 19 lines of code. And it had 2 dependencies, the AWS SDK and Node Fetch. And as we use Node.js, we know that dependencies bring in dependencies, bringing more dependencies. So with two direct dependencies, just a quick question. Maybe some of you want to respond. How many dependencies will you think it brings in? Just give me a number.
Package or the AWS SDK?
Well, just it.
Or both.
All of it, like in total.
I mean, it's Node.js, so like it's going to be a massive Node modules folder. Probably like, I'd guess,
yes,
15.
There's a guess on the chat for 7 million. I think that might be slightly high, but not far off.
That is slightly high, as I think it was last year, July or August. Node.js or the NPM had the 1 millionth package, so 7 million package, or I don't know what the number was. Is a little bit high, and I know that it is Node.js or it's NPM in this case that we're using. You probably assume that it downloads the internet twice, but it's not that bad. It's 19 dependencies, which is still a fair amount. 19. You said 15. With 19, you're close. You're real close. But the question is, how many lines of code do I put into production with 19 lines and 19 dependencies?
This one's probably 7 million.
That's a lot. Yeah.
Well, I will not accuse you. It's almost
a lot. I don't even know.
190,000 something, and it depends, of course, on which point in time you do it, because your dependencies will change. But just to give you a feeling, like you're writing that 19 lines of code, you make it as lean, as maintainable as possible, and you check everything, and then there's the other 200,000. And of course, it's not all of this can be exploited or is not loaded in memory. That depends on the ecosystem, first of all. With Node, fair enough, some things will never be there. But for Java, for instance, it can be that you can load them into memory. If they're in the class path, you can load them into memory. So I've got a Spring Serverless example in Java, because we're talking Java, fair enough. Let me go to this one a bit quicker. It's 222 lines of code. We made this was a demo project, and it was the worst code ever because, well, I wrote it, and I'm a developer advocate, so that means I do emails and bad code. No, I'm kidding. I think I'm pretty good. I tell myself still I'm a pretty good developer, but I do not hear my coworkers complain. But well, maybe they just turned off their Slack channels. That could be as well. Anyway, it had 5 direct dependencies. These 5 direct dependencies came back to 54 dependencies in total. And now the $1 million question: how many lines of code does this, well, serverless jar, let's put it like that, the first serverless archive, put into production? It's just a bit shy of 500,000 lines of code. Yeah. Okay. Almost 460,000. And we did this thing like, I think, a year ago or a year and a half ago. So again, if you use newer versions, it can be slightly more, slightly less, but it's ballpark. And all of this code, you don't know if it's actually executed. And that's true, but it's already there. It's part of your archive, and you're responsible for it. So if for some reason I can sneak in and load that class into the memory and execute that, although it was initially not loaded, you're still having a problem. And do you actually know what's loaded? With Java, there's a lot of reflection and kind of going on. Do you know which classes are actually in memory? Do you know which pods are actually run, are utilized? And moreover, if you work in a team and a certain package is already part of your system, you're like, hey, it's already there. I can use it, right? So over time, things will get used more and more and more and more and more. Because it's already there, let's put something on top of that and put something on top of that. So if something goes wrong with that one and you're not aware, just like the struts thing I showed you earlier, well, let's say we might not only look at these 222 lines, but also at these other 400,000 lines, or at least at what kind of packages we have. We should be a little bit more careful. That's all I'm saying. So basically what I say, open source usage has exploded over the last decade, even more. And that's a good thing, because with open source, and I bet there are a bunch of open source maintainers as well, or people that contribute to open source. Thank you for that, first of all. I love these kind of communities. So, and the usage has exploded, which is cool. I'm not saying that you shouldn't be using open source. Yes, you should. Only just be aware that if it's a large package that is used by thousands or even millions of applications, if that package has a vulnerability, there is a potential of, well, millions of customers or millions of applications that can be hacked. And you do not want to be one of them. So the only thing we're saying is use open source, but be aware and be sure that if you're using it, it's safe. Of course, what is a presentation without graphs, right? This is January 2018 to January 2019 and the amount of packages in each ecosystem. And you see that NPM is the clear winner because, well, if you're looking for a package in NPM, you probably find a dozen of these packages that does the same. And then it's up to you, which one do I pick? And if you look at Maven Central, but it's still between January 2018 and 2019, it's still, I think it was a growth of 100,000 packages. So these things are growing and growing and growing and will stay there forever. So we have a lot to choose from. But there are also a lot of vulnerabilities that we found each day or each year. And in this case, the yellow line is Maven Central. Java is, well, still the clear winner, unfortunately. I don't know why. It could be that they're looking for it better than other ecosystems. At least we know for things like Python and PyPI, there are just a lot less packages. So there are a lot less packages that are vulnerable. But just to take these things into mind. And if you look at where the problems are, and let's focus on the two major ecosystems for backend. That would be NPM for Node.js and Maven Central for Java. You see that most of the problems are not in the package you actually import, but in the layers underneath, like that package, which maybe is that the problem in most cases is in the underlying libraries. So the libraries that are used to build that top level library. So you should not only be aware of like, should I update that major version, but what's underneath it? What's under the hood? If I open that car, what's over there? What's happening? And we can go on and on. We asked the open source maintainers, how confident are you in your own security knowledge? And 63% said, I am kind of confident. But on the other hand, you're looking at your own code in a very strict way, right? So how much do you trust that blindly? Maybe you shouldn't be trusting it blindly, but you should take some precautions. And we can go on and on, but this one is important. We asked our respondents, and this is part of the State of Open Source Security, which is a large report we publish every year. This one was from last year, from 2019, and we asked people, like, who is responsible for security in a application? And most of the people said it's a shared responsibility between a security team, between operations. But 81% of our respondents said, well, developers should take their fair share. They are building the stuff, so they should be aware of what they are using, which, in my opinion, I think is fair. And again, we can go on and on with slides like how did you find out about vulnerabilities? 27% says I probably won't, which is kind of scary. I hope it's not my bank that responded like that. But this one is interesting. Say, once discovered, a maintainer of an open source package wants to fix it. Like many open source developers or maintainers of packages are like, okay, there's a problem, we're going to fix this, and let's get that latest version out. But it depends on how many contributors there are. So once discovered, how much time does it take in general for it to get fixed? What is the median? And the median is in days. It's about 16 days. And there are a lot of people that for the major packages that are backed up by a company, it might be within 1 day. But it also, like, if it's a package that is not heavily maintained or maybe end of life and there is an issue, maybe somebody takes some time off, does it in the free time and rebuilds that or fixes that issue. But in general, it takes 16 days. But as we know, vulnerabilities are not found like on the day the package came out. It takes some time. And probably there are some people that work with legacy systems. So they're using a system that's already there in production, and they probably do not dare to touch it because nobody owns the code anymore, and it works, and a lot of people depend on it. But how much time does it take for a vulnerability to get discovered? And that can take up to 2.5 years. So that means if you have a legacy application or an application that's already there, you should be aware, or you should be keep scanning it. It's not like you're in production, we're done. No. Over time, these things will get found. People will dive in, like reverse engineer it and find out there's an issue. Let's talk a little bit about Docker. Because a lot of people are using Docker, and a lot of people are probably picking a base image from Docker Hub and build their stuff on top of that. Say, for instance, I take the node image from Docker Hub, which is cool. And then I have my node application. I just stack it on top of that, and then I publish my Docker container, and it runs perfectly. All my unit tests are working. The only problem is there is a base image. And this research I did last year, March, but it's just funny to show. Like, we pulled the top 10 free Docker images from Docker Hub and we scanned it for vulnerabilities. And we just took, for instance, for Node or for HTTPD, we just took the latest version, no specific tags, and we scanned it. And we found out that every single one of these packages had vulnerabilities. So there's yet another layer you should take care of. Fun fact. Let's just try this one out. I mean, let me just open another terminal. And once it gets back, let me just, what was the command again? I think it was docker pull node. Let's just pull the latest node image off. So it will generally take the latest node image, it will download it, it will extract it. And then I have the latest node image without doing anything special, not a specific tag or specific version, just the latest one, which is, well, commonly I would think as a developer before I was joining Snyk, I was like, okay, that would be good. It's from Docker Hub and it's the official node image. What could go wrong? Well, then I'm using one of the tools we provide at Snyk. I'm using the Snyk CLI. And in this case, I'm using the Snyk CLI specifically for containers. We can do open source scanning, like the application security that I just showed you for instance, for finding out that you're having Apache struts in the wrong version. But I can do something like this Snyk container, and let's test it, and let's test the node image. And what it's doing now, it's checking all the Docker dependencies. It's looking into that image, and it sees what kind of how this Docker image is built up. And what it will show you after analyzing it, it will send it over to, in this case, the Snyk system, and we will look at what the problems are. While this is running, maybe there are some questions in the meantime we can do.
See, we've chat's been pretty active actually, but it's mostly been some side conversations, people talking
some
about
love for AM.
yeah, totally. We've had a few open source people talking about the packages they maintain. We've had some love for Rust actually. Somebody's moved on to using Rust full time, which that's we've got some interesting projects here at AWS built in Rust. One or two. Yeah. So mostly side conversations, but nothing.
One came up. Is this similar to ECR? So it's slightly different. use cases there, I think, right? So ECR is a place where you would store containers, and this is a scanner for the container. So they can work hand in hand. You could store them in ECR and scan them with Snyk, and get the results. So slightly different use cases there.
So I just scanned my container, my image on this local machine, and what I see is that it found 499 issues, which sounds pretty scary. But the point is, if you look at these vulnerabilities closer, you'll see there are a bunch of high severe vulnerabilities, and if I scroll up, you will see some yellow medium severe vulnerabilities and a bunch of low as well. But if you look at this, you will see that they're all related to Debian. In this case, Debian 9, which is called Stretch, if I'm not mistaken. So the point is, we're in this library, or the Docker container is again based on another base image, which is the Debian base image. And you have to ask yourself, do I actually need a full-blown operating system for just my Node application? Because you're bringing in everything.
Like, do you need image magic?
Yeah, there is.
Right?
I don't know. It depends on. But what people do is what a lot of people do is what we saw is we take the latest, the greatest. It's like tons big, but do I actually need it? And that's a question you have to think about, because this one is just the normal Node image. Maybe I can do something like this. Say Docker pull Node Slim. There's always a Slim version of that. In this case, the Stretch image. So if I do the Slim version, it will download a much. Yeah, no, you can do Alpine as well. But I'm just using the Stretch one. In this case, the Slim version of it, and I can do that again. And instead of Alpine, I don't have Alpine here on this system, but I do Node or Snyk container test Node Slim. And if we test that, you will see at the end that from that 400 something vulnerabilities, you will probably get into the numbers of 100 or 70. And then you can actually look into it like, oh, are these things are here? 70 issues found for a Slim image. And that Slim image is just as good in this case for me, because I just want to build a Node application on top of this. Right. And again, you can ask, do I need more or less? But just by switching out these base images, there's a lot of things you can win from that. And as you see already in the things that Snyk is telling you, like if you're building your own Docker image and you put your Docker file and you connect that to this scan, it can already help you with pointing out like, hey, you're using the latest big image of Node. Maybe you should go to the Slim version that saves a lot of issues you do not even have to look into. I mean, now I have to look into all these 70 things. Like, are these actually exploitable or not? And maybe not. I mean, it depends on how your system works, definitely. But it's yet, as a developer, you probably just dump that container into production. It's yet another layer you have to take care of, and it's growing and growing and growing. All these kind of things. So with this, I just showed you that even if you pull a Docker image from Docker Hub, it can be that there are some vulnerabilities, and they may not be actually exploitable in your situation, but you should be aware of that. Like, oh wow, first of all, like you said, image magic. Do I need image magic on my Node application? Maybe you do. I don't know. Depends on what your use case. I'm not judging if you're using image magic. Not at all. But you see what the difference can make for a Slim image. I already took care of over 300 vulnerabilities. Done. If I say this to my boss, to my manager next day, I took care of over 300 vulnerabilities. How about getting me a raise? I think that would be you make a good story. Yeah. So
Brian, Jim, we had some questions come up. I just want to ask real quick from chat. Also, beyond just security too, when you're building containers, building with the smallest possible image, even beyond security, even helps with performance too. That's something to take into consideration as well, right? Like loading up a container has way more software on it than you need is never a good idea for a lot of reasons, but definitely security. So we had a question around what about internal vulnerabilities, right? So like if you are, maybe we can get some more clarification on this one, but I would assume it's like you're building internal software that maybe is never exposed over the internet or something. Is this an important thing for a company to consider? What do you all think about that?
So I think the question indeed is like, if you're building something that's only used internally, it's not outward facing, but just say the own employees of the system. Yeah. Let me just make an analogy. Like how, if you're having a shop, just your regular convenience store, how much of the stuff gets stolen by the own personnel? And how much do you trust the personnel in there? And that's the $1 million question. If it's a really, really large company with millions of people, and there are still millions of people that can use that, and there is that single consultant or something like that, he was just hired for a specific project, he can get in as well. So it depends. That is the consultancy answer. It depends, but you have to look at the numbers, like how many people can get access to that, and how many people can, and what am I trying to protect? Is it just a bunch of pictures that doesn't say anything, or is it actual customer data with phone numbers and addresses and credit card numbers? So it depends.
I think too, there are enough stories out there that there are lots of ways into a company. You may have the application may not be exposed on the internet, but you get one user that clicks on the wrong email and then something lands on their system, and now the thing that's going to do the attack is sitting on somebody's workstation, right? And it's got access behind the firewall because it's on the same network as everything else. And so, yeah, you may rate them slightly differently. You may prioritize them differently, but I don't think there's any excuse to leave, horrible vulnerabilities with exploits sitting in your code. If you can, if you know about them and you have ways of taking care of them, you should take care of them no matter where they are. And, while everything is supposed to be inaccessible, sometimes people make a mistake and it gets exposed when it's not supposed to be. People forget to shut down a port, or they open up a port to do some troubleshooting and they forget to close it. Like, there's all kinds of things that can happen that, human error gets in the way of a lot of things.
Most of the times it's a domino effect. If somebody get breached, it's not just one thing. I'm just showing you individual hacks in a moment, but in most cases, like somebody misconfigured the firewall, and now somebody came in, and now they can access that internal system as well. Or that internal system was only used internally, but is now connected to a certain database. At a certain point in time, another application that is outward facing can connect to that same database. And then you have a connection. It could be something like cross-site scripting or something like that. So you have to do then we get back to that culture thing that we're talking about in the beginning. Things like threat modeling, like how is it? But it should be something that is constantly there. Like, you should evaluate it not just one point in time when you build it, but over time you should be evaluating that. Is it still the same risk management, and should I care it in the same way? But if it's easy to fix, why not fix it?
Yeah, I'll say too, I've been involved before where software that is internal gets pushed to be external, like next month. You know what I mean? Like, okay, this service will never be exposed, but then like 6 months go down, and they're like, oh, actually we do need to access this from outside the VPN, or we need to access this from somewhere else. So people don't think through, well, we weren't doing the same types of detailed analysis of this software because it wasn't external. That I guarantee you probably won't be done when they move it to external too. So that's something to keep in mind too. Things shift, like services that are internal sometimes get shifted to be external. So just get into good hygiene practices, right? In general.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there was another good question here too about fixing vulnerabilities, in quotes, that aren't actually exploitable, and you can waste your time with that. There's actually two aspects to that, because there's some vulnerabilities that aren't fixable. So what should you do about those? And then should you worry about vulnerabilities that aren't exploitable? If it's not fixable, so a container is a good example, like ImageMagick. Maybe that's not fixable. It's probably not fixable since it's still in the base image. Do you need ImageMagick? Like, you can fix it by removing it, right? So there's part of that. And then, there's other ways, there's other mitigations, or you can put some fences up around it and things. But if it's not exploitable, so that's a kind of an interesting challenge. Like, how do you know if it's really exploitable? There's different levels of exploiting too. Like, just because somebody proved it up on stage at a conference, it may take special skills and special access to make it happen versus other exploits that, like, anybody that can run a script can take advantage of. So there's, I think, an extra bit of research that you either have to do it yourself, or your tools need to provide that extra bit of research and say, this is an exploitable thing. You should pay attention to it. Alert, 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 right? And shameless plug, Snyk does that, but should do that and help you with that.
Okay, I want to skip a few slides there about, like, how do you find out about vulnerabilities in your Docker container? 50% or 45% said I probably won't, which is interesting. But I want to go to this thing, because let's hack. I had enough of talking and slides, but I want to do some hacking, some more hacking. So as I go to my favorite thing, which is called the terminal, and let me just spin up a Node.js application. This is Snyk demo to do. Let me just npm start this one. Or was it npm run? I'm always confused. Or is it actually running? Complete log can be found. Oh wow, I get what I did. I'm not in Snyk demo to do. Hey.
There you go.
Boom, it runs. Cool. So I need this one for later. I first will show you the application. Yeah, super secret password. That is
super secret.
So let me get to localhost. What is it? 3001. There's this application, and let me clear this one. And what is it? It's a to-do application, and I can say, like, buy flowers, because my wife is sleeping, and I hope I didn't wake her up with talking too loud. Sorry, dear. Anyway, I can do a bunch of to-do things, like presenting. Howdy. So it's nothing special. The only thing it has over here, also on the bottom, it has an about page link. And you see, I am a perfect UX designer because you put it on the bottom where nobody can see it. And if you go to that application, you see that, again, I am a really, really great user designer, a UX designer. Well, actually, this is quite scalable. Look, it's scalable, right? So it's good. It works on mobile the same way as it works on desktop. So these are good design practices, I've heard. I'm not sure. Anyway, what I want to show you is that this static about page, which is just a static HTML file, is served to you by the ST package in this Node application. And the ST package probably stands for static. Shows this to you, but this version has a vulnerability, and we call the vulnerability a path traversal vulnerability. So, but for doing this, I will go back to my terminal, and I will do something like, I think it's on HTTP localhost. I have to learn how to type localhost. Well, why should I type if I can just copy paste it? Copy pasting
is been like my entire that's my entire coding career you just described.
Yeah, I'm not a full stack developer. I'm a full Stack Overflow developer, definitely. I copy paste solutions from Stack Overflow, and I see if they work. And then luckily there are scanners that help me with security issues. But you see, if I do a curl, I will have the to do the about page. Anyway, normally if you would do a path traversal, you want to do something like this. Like, we want to break out of the paths. You want to do a break out even more, and we want to go back all the way to, for instance, the root of this application. So I can do this a bunch of more, and you probably will end up in the root. Wrong, because the ST library luckily is a real library, and it recognized that // is trying to break out of that sandbox that I call my web server. But it specifically denies the //. So let's be a tiny little bit smarter, and maybe we can find out how we can still do this. So instead of // I heard people suggesting in the past, like you can do maybe you can do something like escaping or something like this. Wrong. It redirects me to my homepage, because this is that link to the about page, and on top we will find here that the goof to do. So it's rerouting it. Cool. So I can do something we call URL encoding. And I'm wondering if somebody knows what the URL encoding is of a dot. And don't search it in the search engine. If somebody knows it by heart, that would be fun. Let me just give it to you. It's %. You have to ask this in the next interview you do for your new colleague. If somebody knows this by heart, he's probably not a full-time developer, but he might be an amateur hacker. But I can do %2e, and I know that is the URL encoding for a dot. So basically, I say // and by doing this a gazillion times, it doesn't matter how much, because if I'm in the root in a Linux system and I do // I end up in the root anyway. So by doing this, you will see I am in the root of my system. And you see that I have a bin folder over here, and I have an etc folder, and I have a home folder. And this is running on my local machine. So what I can do is go to etc/-wd, and voila, I have a bunch of information. But then you might say, well, you can read. How important is that? Well, this is the start of a journey, as we call it. You can read, and I see this is, again, I have root privileges. So first of all, again, that domino effect I called earlier, you shouldn't be running this as root, first thing. But this application or this hack can read only. That is cool, but I can search for things now that might be interesting, like maybe there is a URL to a database. Maybe there are secrets like credentials or tokens that I can use. Like maybe I do not want to break out to the root, but maybe just go somewhere like just one level down. If I go over here, I can already see there is an app.js. Oh, that's kind of interesting. So if I just do app.js, I can already see what the code is. And I see there is a secret token over here, which accidentally slipped in. Of course not, we did it. But you see where we're going for, and we can do even more. Now I can do like go to your package.json. And your package.json for people who are not familiar with the Node with the Node.js or the npm strategy, that is your manifest file. And in this manifest file, you declare which packages you want to use. You're declaring your dependencies, like which packages do I want to have in my system that I can use. And it downloads it for you. So I can see I'm using this ST library, which I know this is vulnerable. And now I can just go on and on and on and just look at these single libraries and see, like, are there any more libraries that might be interesting to me? Like the MS library, which I know is vulnerable for this version, like the Mark library, like Express might be vulnerable, etc., etc. So this is the start of a journey. But I call the MS library, right? So let's do something with the MS library. Let's call my bluff. And I have to do something like this, source exploits, because alias, yes, cool. So I can do it a little bit quickly, because you see I'm not that really good in typing. The point I want to make, I'm doing another hack for in the same system with the MS library, and well, we have a bunch of developers already on, and I want to ask people like, do you actually like to write regular expressions? And I know some people do like to write regular expressions, but then how do you feel about debugging or even reading other people's regular expressions?
There's a guy on, well, he used to be on the team named Taz that he loves regex. Like I send all of my regex problems to him, anything that I have. You suggest finding somebody. Just find somebody like Taz, right? And then you're set.
But for most people, it's a regular expression is very helpful, but it's a write only thing. Like, okay, it works, never touch it again, because I have no clue how I found this out. It was a bit of prototyping, a bit of like trial and error, and then I found out it worked. Fine, don't touch it. But a regular expression is an interesting thing. Like, say I have something like this. Say if this is my regular expression, and let's put a star in it. Cool. And say this regular expression, ignore the dot. I don't know why it does that, but this is my regular expression, and I want to match it with this string. Obviously, that works because, well, all the A's fit in this pattern. The point is, you do not know if it uses the plus or the star or the plus until halfway and then the star. You actually don't know that. What we do know, if it doesn't match the first time, it will get in some sort of, well, all the way into a backtracking mode. Eventually, it will try all the possible strings that come from that expression and try to match it to the string I want to match it with. And that backtracking, that can go far and far and far and far. And it go, actually, if I can make this regular expression so big that there are a lot of possibilities, it will take a lot of computation time. Now ask yourself, on how many threads does a Node application work? There can be only one. And that one thread, if I can occupy it with that regular expression, that is just computing and trying to do every single thing and match it to a string that might not even ever match. That is interesting, because now that thread is busy doing computation for that regular expression, and it cannot serve the web page anymore. So what I do there is, we call that a regular expression denial service, REDOS. And I will show that to you. Let me just remove this one because, oh, this is the app over here. Okay. So first of all, to show you what I'm going to do, I'm using HTTP over here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert a string, say call mom in 20 minutes. And I'm going to insert this in this forum in just because I can. So if I do this, it will come back and it's fine. And if I look over here, you see that it's call mom in 20M. It does something with the number and the amount of time. That's what this library does. Oh, and now my Siri is going off. Shh. Don't speak to me, Siri. I'm sorry, dear. I'm busy. So, okay, call mom in 20 minutes. That's cool. So let's do something different. What I'm doing here is I'm saying buying milk, and then I give you a regular expression. And what it does, it prints the number 5, and it prints it 60,000 times, and it tries to match it to minutes. And again, I put that in that forum, and I submit it. Oh, I'm now doing something wrong because, well, copy-paste mistakes. Yes. And it took already slightly longer, just a bit longer, because it needs to generate all these 5s. But again, it came back, and still quite quickly. And that means that it does that because it actually matches. It can do something with it. And Node is quite fast. And what you see over here is it says it can buy milk in infinity days. Well, I should do this, like finish my work in infinity days and then say to my boss, like, I'm right on schedule and not doing anything. take off. That would be interesting. Anyhow, but it matches and it came back. What if I just make sure that instead of minutes, and you saw already I misspell things, and that's probably I blame that because I'm not natively English, so I misspelled it now to minutes. It's kind of gangster, I hope. Well, I'm way too old for that. Anyway, now we know it doesn't ever match. It doesn't know that minutes is a time thing. So if I call this, it hangs. And if I just now do something like this and I slam my return key, you will see that it doesn't come through because it needs to evaluate all these single things to minutes, which doesn't make any sense. And it only comes back, okay, now it evaluated everything and it picked up the queue, and you see that my new request will come in. If I add just another zero to that 60,000 and make it 600,000, that would be interesting. Then we will be here watching it all day doing nothing. Well, imagine that you are the biggest competitor to Amazon, and you want to make sure that you on Black Friday they come to your website, and you found out that Amazon has this thing in their web servers. That is interesting. Then you just can call it. Nobody can reach it, and they will come to you. Even more important, say you are in the cloud, like the magic word everywhere, the cloud, and you have elastic scaling. What happens is that if one node is not reachable, probably pops up another node. And if I just script this and do this like 700,000 requests a minute, it will pop another node, pop another node, pop another node, pop another node. And in the end, it's just basically not a denial of service anymore, but the denial of pocket money, which can be interesting. Either way, you're not reachable or it costs you a lot of money. And you don't want that. And yet, this is just, again, because you're importing a library that has a vulnerability which is already fixed. And you just need to switch it out for a newer version. And then you're not vulnerable anymore. So let's get back to that Java application. Or are there any questions already?
No questions. I wanted to say too, like it's great to do security at the application level. You should be doing it at the infrastructure level too. You could absolutely deny scale out into oblivion type attack with auto scaling by just putting in a max. Like all you got to do is put in like, hey, never scale above 10, right? And that'll cover you at least from some
definitely.
So approach it from like all respects too. The application's a good place, but you should definitely not be ignoring your infrastructure too.
Yeah, but the application is for most developers the first part they touch and the first stuff they build, and then they build their infrastructure around that. Not always. It can be. Now I have an echo.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I think we're good. Anyway, you should be working on these kind of things from the beginning, and then we have that whole shift left kind of way of working, which basically means that you should be doing this from the beginning as soon as possible. So the developer on his local machine should do this. You should do this while you push it to your Git repository or whatever repository, and connect that to make sure that it's scanned. But I will come back to that later because I want to go to that Java application I showed you. So I probably need to sign in. Plus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, doesn't work. I'm not sure why not. Maybe I just crashed it. Could be. Maybe if I sign up. Already exist. Now it doesn't. All right. So I showed you this Java application earlier that has that struts vulnerability. And we did the environment variables. We called the environment variables to see what's in there. But I'm going to show you what this application does. And again, I didn't have any inspiration. It's a to-do list because, well, we need to do stuff. But say I do something like this. This is kind of dorky, right? Eat pie, funny, using the pie sign, and do it somewhere on there and give it a high priority. Okay, so if I create this, what we see is that this pi sign is transformed into the ASCII representation. That is interesting to know because we know that there is a native to ASCII binary part of the JDK, and that is actually used to compile the title. So the symbol will not be there, but the ASCII representation. Don't ask me why, but we did it. Anyway, other thing we can do over here is we can upload files. What we can do over here is we can upload zip files. And we upload these zip files and we extract these zip files with a library. And that's the interesting part. This library is vulnerable. So let's create a vulnerable zip application. I have some code over here. And this code creates a zip application. Basically creates a file. Let's name this file howdy. I make a zip entry that is a good.txt with the body. This is a good text file. And I insert a zip entry with, remember this one? This is the path traversal thing. So what I'm trying to do here, I'm putting a path traversal stuff over here. Let's get back to my thing over here. I think it was, which one was it? This one, yes. This is the Java home bin folder. Let's pull that one. And let's call it native to ASCII. Cool. Now it inserts the content of evil.txt. What's in evil.txt? Echo, you just got hacked. Wow. Howdy, partner. You just got hacked. I find that more interesting. Just to make a difference. Cool. Let's run this. So let's build this one. And we see over here, smally, there is a howdy.zip. Let me show you in that a little bit bigger. So let's move this screen. Let's go to my zip creator. And we see there is this howdy.zip. And let's look into that zip file. And what we see is this zip file contains two files, a good.txt and a file called .. Ooh, there's a mistake here. Let me regenerate that. Yep, that's true. But you get the point, right? I just created a zip file that has a file with a path traversal. So now it's fixed. So what I'm trying to do is by unpacking it, I'm trying to traverse the path to the root, go into the JDK, and override the native to ASCII file with this echo with howdy partner, you are just hacked. Of course, yes.
The only thing I would ask you to do, Brian, is to add a link to the show with all the people that you hack so that they come watch the show. You could use howdy partner in your hacker message, but you have to at least link out to the show to get us more viewers.
Cool, will do. So if I just now use that howdy zip file and I upload it, it will unzip that file and it will put, normally we'll put the files into the public folder. So by uploading it, you will see files in the public folder is good.txt. That's the good file. So we know that this zip file is actually unzipped. And it put the normal file into the normal file into the public folder. But what happened to the other file? That is the big question. Did it had an exception but didn't show it to me, or did it actually just execute? And I can already tell you it executed it, but let me show you because that's more fun. So I will say, howdy, put it somewhere in 9070, give it a high priority, doesn't even matter. Because if I create it now, I overrode the native to ASCII function with that, howdy partner, you just got hacked. Because this zip library, this unzip library, doesn't really check for a path reversal. What it does is it blindly takes the path. It creates a new file with the same file name as we had. It concatenates the two strings and executes. What it should have been doing is see where in Java we have the canonical path, which basically says where does it end up? And if I refer that to where I am, I can see if it's breaking out of my sandbox of my web server and goes into a place where I don't want it to be or not. The point is, it doesn't in this version, and this version is already fixed. Now let me show you how you can find out. Let me get back to the... So I have this application over here, and this application sneak goof of a Java goof that I just showed you, which is in that Docker container, and I just hacked with that zip file. It is a multi-module application, and normally you can do sneak test, but it will only take the application that is there in your folder at this point. And I do this on my local machine. I am, as I showed you, I'm a guy that loves the terminal. So in this case, I do something like all projects, and it scans literally for all projects, as this is a multi-module POM file or multi-module Maven project. So by doing this, it will look for, in this case, Java files, but it can also be Node files or whatever. It gets the dependency tree, it abstracts the dependency tree, and sends that over to Snyk. And what Snyk does is, because we have the dependency tree, we just cross-reference it to our data and see if there are vulnerabilities. But not only that, the vulnerabilities to point out, like, you're wrong, there's something wrong with this. That is interesting, but not really useful for a developer. Am I right? I mean, if I'm a developer, I want to know, like, how can I fix that? And that is the interesting part. So what I'm seeing over here is issues with no direct upgrade, but just put this one out. This is that problem I just showed you. This is the arbitrary file write via archive extraction. I just showed you that one. If I want to know more, I can go to this URL to see what is the actual problem. But the point is, it already says upgrade, and I enlarged my screen, so it's a little bit out of context. Normally, it would be, well, at least something more readable. But yeah, it needs to look good on screen, right? So anyway, what it says to me is, oh, let me find it back. Upgrade from 112 to 113. And if I go back to my POM file, oh, it's over here. Now let me enlarge it for you. You will see that over here, I indeed have 112. And I can just change it to 113. I can show you that I can now rebuild my whole Docker container and that it's working. If you want me to do that, I can do that. But trust me, it is working. And that is what the point is of Snyk. We try not only to point out where things go wrong, and there are other scanners in the world that can maybe do the same, but we already help you with remediation advice. If there is something you can do, we point it out, like switch these two dependencies out so you get rid of the problem. That is something that is nice to you. And I do this on my local machine because this is as left as possible as we can. And you can do this in different places. So as we are already over, well, I think an hour and 14 minutes, and let's go to do the fixing part. I think that is interesting as well. So the point is that fixing is not only tooling. And we already call it out. I think fixing starts with culture. And it's not, I say team culture over here, but it might be even company culture or whatever kind of culture. But it needs to be part of the DNA of how you want to develop software. I mean, we work with different kind of people. We work with different kind of people with different mindsets. If you look at the developer, we want to create things. If you will look at the old-fashioned security person, the only thing they care about, because that is their main KPI, is to make sure that you will not get breached. If we play along a little bit together, so I think about like, okay, not getting breached is something the security people like. If I start with that from the beginning, that would make my life maybe a bit easier. If the security people will be like, hey, maybe we should do things in certain ways that it will help development as well, we play along. Same holds for operations people, because what they care about is can it scale? Can I reboot it as fast as possible when somebody calls me 3 a.m. in the morning? Because in the end, we all value our sleep probably. And management, what do management think about? Most of the time, they think about the revenue. How can we make money out of this? And that's for a good reason, because if you work in a commercial company, you need to basically make money. Only the point is, how much money or how much time should we invest in security? And how much what is the return on investment? Well, it goes well until you get breached. If you're not getting breached, it's perfectly fine. You don't have to do anything. No. Just as management needs to, for instance, if your manager doesn't give you as a developer time to work on your code base to make it scalable and to make sure that technical depth is worked away, the same holds for security. We need to be educated. We need to have time to fix these things, because if we don't prioritize this and you fall in this trap, you get me, right? So we need to play along together. And this sounds really, really simple, but I think this is the point where you need to start. But also, it's the hardest point, because we need to change people in the mindset of it. But we can help that with process. The only thing we do not want is create more process, create new process. Because if you get hacked I can speak for myself, like in a previous job, we had a data breach once. At that point, everything changed, because now we had to go to upper management and explain what happened. At that point, there were a lot of restrictions and we need to do this and that and whatever pen test before going to production, but we went into production 3 times a day. So pen testing 3 times a day is impossible. Anyway, if you're on top of that, at the point we were breached, it was like, yes, we do this. We need to do this because everybody's looking at you. But after a week, after a month, after 2 months, slightly everything went back, because at the end of the year, what counts was that we delivered the stuff, that it made revenue, etc. We came back all to the old ways of working. So instead of creating more process, why not just make sure that it integrates with your process? Say it scans. Let's just, weird story. Say we have something that can scan your application, and say it can actively ping you when something is wrong or when something is found. That doesn't interfere with your normal way of working, and maybe you can integrate it with your sprint planning board or wherever you're using, and put it on top of the backlog because it's a severe vulnerability. These kind of things, these kind of issues, instead of looking for it yourself but getting actively pinged, it already takes a lot of your mind, and it is a better integration with your way of working. And then comes tooling. So you need to pick the tooling that is right for that, for your process. You need to automate, we think you need to automate as much as possible, because if you can automate things, you do not have to do it manually anymore, which takes less time, and I can spend my time on the things I'm good at, which is creating new software. So that's why we basically say you need to DevSecOps. There's that buzzword again, your pipeline. And I don't mean your CI pipeline, as some people might think, but I may mean your whole software development lifecycle. And then we can come into the phrase, we need to shift left. And as you look at this picture, left is, in this case, as close to the source as possible while coding on my machine. I'm showing you that I can use the Snyk CLI to do this. I can also have integrations within my IntelliJ, but I simply like the terminal better, so I use that. But if I can do that on my local machine, when I bring in a new vulnerable or a new dependency in this case, I know already from that point if it's vulnerable or not. If I scan it with my sneak test, like I did with that zip slip or that ZT zip I showed you, and I see, oh, I used 112 and I need to use 113. It's an easy step. I just need to change the number in my POM file and I'm done. Then I might put it into my repository, and that repository is cool and it lives. The code lives there over time. Like it can be there for weeks, days, weeks, months, doesn't matter. And over time, things can change. Like maybe there is a new vulnerability found. Maybe there is a new fix. It can be that there's vulnerability found and there's no fix yet. Why not just connect your repository to that and make sure that you get actively pinged when there is some news about this thing, about this dependency? And again, how can you fix that? By maybe automating it with automated fix PRs. And guess what? We can do that. Also, I can't imagine that you are comfortable with a certain level of vulnerabilities, because to get to 0 vulnerabilities might be very extreme, or well, we're not living in utopia. It can be that you're okay with a certain level, but you do not want to get worse. So why not every branch or every pull request comes in, scan it first, not only if it works, but also if you don't bring in new stuff, if you do not get worse. That is an issue. I already believe that a lot of people and a lot of companies have something in their CI pipeline, in their build farm, in their if they do CI or CI/CD, there's something there. They're building their binary. And at that point, they scan it and they use it as a gatekeeper. And you still need to do this because this is simply, again, another point in time. And you still need to do that. When you create your Docker container, scan it. First of all, recreate your Docker container every single time and on a daily basis. Because if you use the latest node version today is different from the latest node version next week. But at that point, you are not ready yet.
Hey,
yeah, sure.
Since I can't believe we're just having so much fun. Time is flying. We're wrapping into the last 10 minutes or so, and I just wanted to make sure we could answer a question that came in the chat. So the question was, can you dynamically scan with EC2 Image Builder or AWS Inspector?
I will leave that one to Jim. I honestly don't know.
Yeah,
if you can dynamically scan it.
Yeah, so EC2 Image Builder would be building a VM, I think, which would not be something we would scan. There may be other tools that would scan that, but more to ECR. I saw some questions about ECR, so you can definitely scan. And I think if you think about the workflow here, right, you could scan in ECR from ECR. You could scan. I would suggest maybe better scan before you push it to ECR. Like if you can scan it as you build it and then push it, if it's okay, then good. And then you need to continue scanning it while it's sitting in ECR as well. And then if you launch it, then you really need to scan it, right? So if it's running in your EKS cluster or whatever, right, it needs to be scanned there too. AWS Inspector, I think similar, but I think AWS Inspector is more on the infrastructure side as well. So yeah.
I'm totally with that. If you go to production, you still need to scan. You're not done if you build it, and that's cool. What you can do is, for instance, create a snapshot of it, and I can show you that over here. I did a sneak test, but I can also do a sneak monitor. And let me do again the all projects thing. And what it does, in this case, it takes the snapshot of this moment in time with my dependencies now, like if I push it to production now, and it will push that information to the Snyk UI, and it will scan that on a daily basis. So at the time of build and deploying it to whatever infrastructure you want, you still need to have that version scanned on a daily basis, because we already saw earlier that vulnerabilities will be found over time. It can take up to 2.5 years. So I'm just posting the snapshot to Snyk over here, and if I go to my application, and I go to my projects in this case, and you see I have a bunch of projects. You see I just pushed my Java Goof over here because I only selected my CLI integrations, but I can also use all my other integrations. And you see over here that it has already a bunch of vulnerabilities, like the struts thing over here, and it shows you what happens over here. And you can now I monitor it, so Snyk will scan it for me on a daily basis and actively ping me by email or by Slack integration or whatever integration you love to do that. So it's not so much in the infrastructure, but when you push it to the infrastructure, if we're talking about application security, so application vulnerabilities, that part is static until you build something new, and then you monitor that part. So there are different ways of scanning this, and this is definitely one I recommend to see what the problems are. If there's something new or it's more exploitable or there's a new exploit for it, it will call you and you can definitely work that out instead of manually searching for new issues.
Another shameless plug. This is for all of us. One of the links that AM had posted earlier, took in the chat, is a workshop that we did. It was a Snyk and AWS workshop, and you can see Snyk plugged into a number of the Code Suite tools. So there's like all kinds of that's the one. He just posted it again. So you can see that, and you can actually run through the workshop. All the steps are there, and the content and material and sample app is all there. So, and there's a video, so you can see the workshop as it took place too. So if you want to see that work with other AWS services, you can.
The point is, you need to scan this, or you need to do this while building, during your life cycle of your software. But when you're in production, you should be scanning this, because that was actually the first hack I did about the struts vulnerability. It was already there and nobody looked at it anymore. So you should be taking a snapshot of that point in time and regularly scan that. And you can scan all sorts of stuff, like the Docker container, for instance. But this is specifically on the application security. So, and now we're only talking about the dependencies. Of course, you need to take care of your own code as well. We have a bunch of stuff available on our blog, like best practices, and there, if you want to look at that. But let's make sure that you shift left and start with this from the beginning of your software development lifecycle for doing this. And actually, I want to end with that if there are more questions. And everything I showed you today, like the CLI I'm using, and like the monitoring and the Snyk UI, you can use that for free, or else I wouldn't be showing this. Just try it out if you and think look at it. What you think of it. If you have any feedback, feel free to contact one of us. So yeah, that's about what I want to show. I can still do a bunch of hacks if we want to, but I think we're already almost done with this.
Yeah, we're exceedingly coming up to time very, very quickly, very fast. I'll put up. Brian said contact all of us. Obviously, with questions for Snyk, you probably want to hit up Brian and Jim. I learned a lot today, but not enough to probably help any of you all out with the Snyk side. AWS side, you can hit us up too, Marie and me, if you need any help. So we're going to wrap things up here. I want to give Brian and Jim one last chance to if I'm getting started with Snyk for the very first time, what's the best resource to go? If somebody came up to you and said, how do I become you, Brian? How do I become an expert in Snyk? What would your first piece of advice be?
I would go, that's the URL you see in my screen now. I would go to snyk.io. I would just use a free account and try it out. Just try it out. Just sign up for a free account, connect your public Git or repository, or even your private Git repository to Snyk to scan it automatically. Download the CLI and use it on your local machine and see if that works for you. On our website, there are a bunch of integrations that can help you either in your IDE if you're using VS Code or IntelliJ, or it doesn't matter. We have a bunch of integrations for a lot of these things. So just mix and match whatever capability you want in the form you like it. I think that is the greatest power we have. It is still scanning your dependencies, but it can work like you want it. It's not you need to use it in this way or in that way. You can do it in different ways, tailored to the way you work. But it starts with signing up for a free account and just use it. Try it out. The proof is in the eating of the pudding, right? Instead of just me telling you should do it. Just try it, and it's free.
We've got a question from Juice Weasel. I think this one is a pretty in-depth question, and we've got 2 minutes left. So Juice Weasel, we might not be able to get to a full answer for you here. 30-second or less answer from either of you, Brian or Jim. If you're starting fresh, brand new, right, would you say it's more important to scan in the build deploy phase, or is monitoring more important once you've entered the maintenance phase of a software project? I mean, my answer is both. They're probably both important. You can't really skip on either of these things, in my opinion. But what's your 30 seconds?
Yeah, it's basically a single thing, right? If you do, so Brian showed like Snyk Monitor, right? It's a single thing, and it gives you the report immediately, and then it's there, and you can just look at it tomorrow and see what the new updates are. So doesn't have to be a separate thing. I would say scanning, if you had to pick, and you're starting with a fresh project, just doing the test is, it is the most important thing, because you may not be in a production mode yet, but at least you know what you're starting with is good or bad, and you can adjust on the fly, right?
Yeah.
Totally.
Definitely.
Right,
well,
Marie,
so we're
take us out.
Yeah, we're at the final wire. So first of all, thank you everyone for joining us. Please come back on Monday to see our partner Bridgecrew and our sign off. So we'll need your help, Brian and Jim. As always, we have a sign off. So we either use Giddy Up, Y'all Come Back Now, or Happy Trails. So do one of you want to pick which sign off we're using today?
Y'all come back now.
Awesome. So we'll do the collective Y'all Come Back Now since we're at time. So Y'all Come Back Now. See you guys next Monday. Thanks for joining us. Thank you, Snyk. Everyone have a great day.
See ya. Thanks.
See you later. Thanks.